5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CDC frequently communicated with big tech and social media companies to coordinate the censorship of posts that express skepticism or criticism of the COVID-19 vaccines. Dr. Walensky, is there a difference between medical opinions and misinformation?
There are things that are scientifically proven over and over again in the literature, and those eventually become fact. But I think that there are ways to interpret that.
Exactly. Reasonable people disagree on a medical path forward, correct? I mean, that.
Yeah, but I would also say that when there is increasing science, that leads to fact that more and more people then generally agree.
I mean, patients often are advised to get a second opinion on medical advice. CDC records, however, show that CDC officials sometimes flag social media posts which they deem to be misinformation. My question is, did the CDC work with private companies to influence a censorship of dissent about vaccines?
You know, that topic is one that is under litigation in the courts, so I will not be speaking to that.
Recently, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the establishment kind of waffled a bunch of facts and then asked for a bunch of things to be censored that, in retrospect, ended up being more debatable or true. Did the CDC work with Meta, or I like to call it Facebook still, to censor or otherwise alter any post?
Here's what I can tell you. The most important thing that has gotten us out of this pandemic, I think, is our vaccine and how well they work and how safe they are.
I understand that.
And it was really important that the American people understand how well they worked and how safe they are.
I understand it.
But in terms of the communications, that is, again, something that I'm not going to speak to because it is currently under
court. So you're not going to answer
litigation.
the question?
It is currently under court litigation.
I hear that so much on everything we do. It's currently under investigation. Did the president take a bribe? Dr. Jackson, it's currently under investigation. Did the CDC ever work with Facebook to craft internal policies on censoring posts regarding the COVID pandemic?
Again, this is something that is under court litigation. What I will say, though, it is so very important to get correct, factual information out to people to understand the overwhelming benefit of these vaccines over the very minimal
What about Twitter?
risks.
Can you answer that?
Again, under court
litigation. So you
litigation.
refuse to answer the question?
No, what I'm saying is it is under court litigation, and I will say that the most important thing that we were working towards at CDC is to get facts out to people so they understood in plain language what was important, which is that the
I'm going to
vaccines
reclaim my time. Facebook's policy on coronavirus misinformation dated February 8, 2021 said that it would purge, quote, false claims, including the notion that COVID-19 is man-made or manufactured. Director, did the CDC ever recommend that Facebook or other companies censor posts promoting the lab leak theory?
We're speaking to the same thing. These are all situations that are under court litigation. I will not be speaking
Did
to
the CDC ever recommend that Facebook or other companies censor posts suggesting that vaccines did not prevent the infection or spread of COVID-19?
What was most important to CDC was to get information about how well the vaccines were working and how safe they are. And, you know, many of the questions, all of the questions that you're asking are along the same lines. They're currently under litigation in the courts.
In one email, a CDC official tells a Twitter employee that, quote, CDC is working on a project with Census to leverage their infrastructure to identify and monitor social media for vaccine misinformation, unquote. And that they would, quote, like the opportunity to work with Twitter's trust team on a regular basis to discuss what they are seeing, end quote. So, Director, did the CDC work on a regular basis with Twitter or other companies to monitor or censor vaccine misinformation?
Congressman, my answer is the same. It's the same line of questioning. We wanted to get important information out to the people so that they would favor vaccines because they were working. They were preventing severe disease and death.
I understand. But it turns out that some of the perspectives that the government censored, like the lab leak theory and some questions about the vaccine, were correct all along. But the government censored that. A lab leak is possible. I would go even further to say the lab leak is probable. Even some in the government have admitted that. The vaccine did not stop spread or infection. I'm not saying it was completely bad, but it did not stop the spread or infection.
I think, actually, if I could actually just correct that point, and that is, initially it did. For the Wuhan strain and for the Alpha strain, all of the early data and the literature published in the New England Journal demonstrated that for those who worked, if you didn't get infected, that you were not transmitting it to other people, and it had very high efficacy early on, up to 96%. So
and that's
it did
part of what
change over
I
time.
understand. I hate to interrupt, but my time's expired. But that's something that this committee is going to continue to investigate. But with respect to censorship, censoring dissenting opinions is unacceptable, and that's something else that this select committee needs to investigate. We don't need to see that ever happen again, and I look forward to trying to present the truth to the American people about what role the government played in censoring dissenting medical opinions, which may well prove to be true. Madam Chair, I yield back.